From the dark forests of Scandinavia to the rain-soaked moors of Britain, there's a legend that has terrified people for more than 1,000 years. They call it the Wild Hunt. Imagine standing alone on a winter road. The wind dies, you feel the air tighten, as if the world itself is holding its breath, and then you hear it, a chorus of horns, the furious gallop of invisible riders. If you look up, you might glimpse torches flickering in a sky full of shadows. This was never just a story. For many, the Wild Hunt was proof that no matter how much we pretend to control nature, there are forces that remain beyond us. In this video, we'll explore where this legend came from, how it evolved, and why it still haunts our imagination. To understand the Wild Hunt, you have to go back to the oldest myths of Northern Europe. In Norse mythology, there was Odin, the god of wisdom, war, and the dead. He wasn't just a benevolent ruler. Odin was restless, always searching, always hunting. People believed he rode an 8-legged horse named Sleipnir, racing across the sky to gather the souls of fallen warriors. Some stories said you could hear him in winter storms. The roar of the wind was the gallop of his ghostly army, the howling of wolves that followed in his wake. As these beliefs spread south into what is now Germany, Odin became Woden. And the idea of the Wild Hunt grew. Instead of just collecting the dead, Woden's hunt might snatch away anyone caught on the road after dark. One of the earliest written accounts comes from the 11th century. A monk named Orderic Vitalis recorded the story of a priest who saw a vast horde of giant riders in black, accompanied by creatures that looked half human and half beast. They passed by without a word, leaving the priest frozen with dread. Centuries later, the German folklorist Jacob Grimm, one of the famous brothers Grimm, studied all these old stories. He gave them a single name: the Wild Hunt. And so what started as the path of a god through the sky became a legend that people all over Europe believed they might encounter themselves. One of the most fascinating things about the Wild Hunt is how it adapted to each place it reached. Every country, every region, had its own twist. In Norway, it was called the Oskoreia, the noisy ride. Here, it was sometimes led by trolls, elves, or the spirits of the dead. People said that during Christmas, the Oskoreia would surge across the land, breaking into houses to punish the wicked. In Denmark, there were stories of the Vildjakt, and people believed the hunt could be heard in the howling winter gales. In Germany, the hunt often had a female leader, Frau Holle or Perchter. These figures were both feared and respected. They travelled with a host of unbaptized children's souls, rewarding those who kept their homes clean and punishing the lazy. In alpine areas, some legends replaced them with ghostly kings, like King Dietrich, leading warriors through the snowy passes. England developed its own version, Herne the Hunter. Herne was said to be the ghost of a royal huntsman who hanged himself in Windsor Forest. Locals claimed to see him on stormy nights, antlers rising from his head, driving a pack of phantom hounds. Herne wasn't just a frightening story, his appearance was considered a warning that disaster was near. In the West Country, stories spoke of the devil's dandy dogs, hounds with eyes like burning coals. If you heard them howling, you were supposed to throw yourself to the ground and cover your eyes. In France, people feared the Mesnie Hellequin, Hellequin's army. Sometimes it was described as a troop of the damned, and in Normandy, they believed King Arthur himself was doomed to lead the hunt as penance for his pride. In Spain, the Santa Compaña crept through Galician villages. Unlike the raging cavalcade of the north, this was a silent procession, pale figures carrying candles. If you crossed their path, you had to join them, carrying a spectral torch until you died. All these versions share one idea. There's a moment when the boundaries between life and death collapse, and you might be swept away. For most people in the past, the Wild Hunt wasn't folklore, it was a real threat. Imagine living in a small village surrounded by dark forests. No streetlights, no weather forecasts. When a sudden storm crashed over the hills, you might wonder, was it just wind, or was it the hunt? People described the air going still, so quiet you could hear your own heartbeat, Then came the sound of galloping hooves and horns blowing from nowhere. Some said they saw riders on skeletal horses, their cloaks whipping in a wind that no one could feel. Seeing the hunt was considered an omen that someone in the village, or even you, would soon die. So how did people try to protect themselves? Travelers who felt the hunt approaching had a few options. Lie face down in the road so the riders wouldn't notice you. Draw a protective circle with iron, believed to repel spirits. Recite prayers, especially the Lord's Prayer, as fast as possible. Offer bread or coins as a bribe to pass safely. In parts of Germany, people hung charms over their doors at Christmas to keep the hunt out. Some even sealed their chimneys to block the spirits from swooping into the house. And there was another detail, one that shows just how real this felt to people. In many places, if you were taken by the hunt, you weren't killed outright. Instead, you might return days later, exhausted, unable to remember where you'd been, but carrying the frostbite and bruises to prove something had happened. As Europe entered the age of books and paintings, the wild hunt evolved again. It became more than a superstition, it became a powerful symbol. In medieval chronicles, the hunt was often described as a sign of God's anger. Chroniclers used it to explain sudden disasters, crop failures, outbreaks of plague, or the deaths of nobles. By the 18th and 19th centuries, artists and poets were fascinated by legends like this. They were drawn to what they called the sublime, the feeling you get when you face something immense and terrifying. One of the most famous examples is Goethe's poem Der Erlkönig. In the poem, a supernatural rider comes to claim a child no matter how fast the father rides to escape. It's not the wild hunt exactly, but the atmosphere of unstoppable doom is the same. Richard Wagner, the composer, was also inspired by stories of ghostly huntsmen. His opera The Flying Dutchman tells of a cursed captain doomed to sail forever, echoing the idea of eternal pursuit. And in painting, you see some of the most striking images of the hunt. Artists like Peter Nicolai Arbo created huge, dramatic canvases, phantom horsemen racing across stormy skies, hounds snapping at the souls of the dead. These images turned folklore into art and helped keep the legend alive. Through all these works, the wild hunt became more than a scary story. It became a way to talk about mortality, fate, and the forces no human can outrun. So why does this legend still feel so powerful, even in our modern world? Some psychologists, especially those influenced by Carl Jung, believe the hunt represents what he called the shadow, everything we fear, deny, and try to bury. The hunt is a force that breaks through the walls we build around our comfortable lives. Others see it as an ecological metaphor. For people who lived close to the land, winter was a real threat. Months of hunger, cold, and disease. The wild hunt gave that danger a face, a story that explained why the world could be so cruel. And sociologists point out that legends like this often serve to enforce moral codes. The hunt comes for the prideful, the greedy, and those who break taboos. If you stepped outside the boundaries of your community, you risked being carried away. In all these interpretations, the wild hunt is a reminder. No matter how advanced we think we are, there are still forces we can't predict or control. The wild hunt has been thundering across Europe's imagination for over 1,000 years. It started as a god's procession, became a warning of divine punishment, transformed into romantic art, and evolved into a psychological symbol. And through it all, the core idea has never changed. There are powers bigger than any of us, forces that can sweep us up without warning. Even today, when a sudden storm rolls in and the wind howls through the trees, some part of us still listens. We still wonder if we'll hear hoofbeats or catch a glimpse of torchlight moving where no path exists. Because deep down, we know we haven't outgrown the old fears. And maybe, in some ways, we never should. If you enjoyed this journey into the shadows of folklore, please like and subscribe. We explore the legends and myths that shaped our world and reveal what they still have to teach us today. And remember, when the night is cold and the wind begins to rise, listen carefully. You might just hear the wild hunt passing by. Yours truly, Mythos, the historian.